let's see, now I've got 5 o'clock. So I think I am gonna go ahead and call to order the September 14th Utilities Service Board meeting. First on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Were there any questions or additions or changes for the minutes? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Move.
Second.
All right. Latrina, can you please call the roll?
Sherman,
Yes.
Kapler,
Yes.
Burnham,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Parmenter.
Yes.
Okay, minutes are approved. Next up are the claims. And first we have standard invoices in the amount of $616,864.07. Were there any questions or concerns about the invoices? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Then is there a motion to approve standard invoices?
So move.
Second.
And Latrina?
Bannock,
Yes.
Burnham,
Yes.
Parmenter,
Yes.
Kapler,
Yes.
Sherman.
Yes.
Okay, invoices are approved. Next up are utility bills, and we actually have that in 2 parts. The first document is for the EDF Energy Services payments of $122.77. Are there any questions about that? Okay, is there a motion to approve that claim?
So move.
Second.
All right, Latrina, please call the roll.
Kapler,
Yes.
Parmenter,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Burnham.
Yes.
Okay, that portion of utility bills is approved. The main portion is for an amount of $166,369.33. Any questions on this part? Okay, then is there a motion to approve the utility bills?
So move.
Second.
And Latrina, please call the roll.
Parmenter,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Kapler,
Yes.
Burnham,
Yes.
Sherman.
Yes.
Okay, utility bills are approved. Next up are wire transfers in the amount of $469,657.47. Are there any questions about wire transfers? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Latrina?
Burnham,
Yes.
Kapler,
Yes.
Parmenter,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Bannock.
Yes.
Okay, wire transfers are approved. Now we have customer refunds in the amount of $2,208.10. Are there any questions or concerns about refunds? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
And Latrina?
Sherman,
Yes.
Kapler,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Burnham,
Yes.
Parmenter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have approval of the consent agenda, and Vic Kelson is going to talk to us about this.
And I remembered to unmute.
Very good.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to bring before you the consent agenda for this week. It totals $17,955. There are 3 items. The first to VHW Engineering for $5,000. This is the 2020 Griffey Dam Inspection Report. Item B is to Control Freaks Consulting, LLC, $3,685 for installation of more flow modules at the Monroe plant. And then finally, Potomac Electrical Services, LLC, or electrical maintenance and testing, $9,270 for the installation of 6 capacitor trip devices at Dillman. Are there any board members who wish to hear one or more of these items separately? Hearing none, if there's no opposition, the consent agenda will be approved as recommended by staff. I hear no opposition, so the consent agenda is approved. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Vic. Next up, we have a request for approval of a first amendment to the agreement with Wessler Engineering for AWWA water audit date. And Cindy Shaw was going to explain this for us. Cindy? Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks, Jean. Cindy Shaw, Purchasing. Yes, this is we're asking the board to approve the First Amendment to an agreement with Wessler Engineering. This is an agreement that was just recently passed. We didn't think that they would require an end date all the way to the end of the deadline, but we decided after it was initially approved to put forth an amendment to give them all the way to the deadline, which I believe is December 31st. So this just merely extends the date, the original date of the contract to December 31st.
Okay. So no financial changes at all.
No, there is no financial impact. Yes, that's correct.
Any questions for Cindy? All right, seeing none, then is there a motion to approve this amendment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, and Latrina, please call the roll.
Kepler,
Yes?
Burnham,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Parmenter,
Yes.
Sherman.
Yes.
Okay, that amendment is approved. Next up, we have a request for approval of an agreement with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions Incorporated to develop a stormwater master plan. And I believe we were going to have Kelsey Thetonia talk with us about this. Kelsey.
Good evening, everyone. This is Kelsey Thetonia, MS4 coordinator with CBU Environmental. So this contract is for the creation of the city's first stormwater master plan. The contractor is Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions, which was formerly AMEG Foster Wheeler. The contract amount is $200,000 and the contract duration will be 2 years. We have Heather Williams from Wood in the meeting with us, and she will be the project manager for this project. So I'm gonna go ahead and let her introduce herself to you.
Hi, my name is Heather Williams. I've been with Wood for about 15 years now, and I've led a lot of different cities through master planning processes. Some of those cities include Boulder, Colorado. I've helped Philadelphia, Atlanta. So big cities and small cities go through this the stormwater master planning process. So I'm here to answer any questions about the contract if you have any.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions for Heather and or Kelsey. Any questions? Yes, Amanda.
Hi, Jean. Thanks. So I just kind of have a question about, I mean, I know that it says first ever citywide stormwater, but give me a little bit more information about what we're going to be doing here.
Yeah, I can definitely do that for you. And Heather, feel free to chime in. So the project is going to be split into different phases. So mainly being 3 phases. The first for a program assessment across all city departments and within CBU. That'll have to do with MS4 compliance, all of our procedures and our ordinances to get some more information on that. And then we're going to go into the planning process where we involve a city staff focus group, stakeholder groups, and get input from everyone involved with stormwater management, basically. Go into the planning process, and that will be basically the first 2 phases will be the first year of the project. And that will cost just under $70,000 for the creation of the plan itself and the program assessment. The second year of the project is going to be getting us started on implementation. So the rest of the funding for this contract, Wood is going to be helping us implement the beginning of the plan. So that is going to be determined once we get into the planning process and hear what everyone wants to see. So there will be transfer input along the way.
So is there a plan within this? I mean, you mentioned just in terms of some of the internal things that are being discussed. Is there also then a plan to have like an inventory of the current citywide systems and, you know, the age of them and whatnot, so that we'll have essentially a map of what we're dealing with? Or do we already have that and this is going to be a layover that map?
That could fall under the implementation phase if we choose to hire Wood or to include that with this contract. Heather, do you want to speak more about some of these things that you've worked with other cities on?
Yeah, sure. We, in the initial planning phase, we'll look at your data and we'll see, where there could possibly be aging infrastructure and then how much it will cost to upgrade that aging infrastructure. So, I mean, that's definitely one piece of this project, is to do a GIS evaluation, but the implementation will, the second half of the implementation phase will go into greater detail of that.
Okay, and I saw Jason's hand and then Jim.
Thanks, Jean. Yeah, I too have a few questions about this. I mean, it's not an inexpensive contract. So Vic, can you talk a little bit about how we selected this particular contractor?
The contractor was selected through an interviewing process where we actually invited requests. We sent out a request for quotations. Was it request for information? I can't recall. It was a request for quotations.
It was a request for proposals.
Yes, and there were several proposals, and we interviewed the candidates that we thought met our needs the best. And then from among them, we selected Wood as our first choice.
And so where is Wood located?
There, I don't know where their major office is, but the project manager for this project is here in Bloomington.
Okay. I'm not sure who's right to answer this one. So whoever, what's driving the immediate need for us to do this right now?
Like, do you want to talk about this? Or?
I can talk about that. The city has never had a stormwater master plan. This has been on our agenda for a number of years and was one of the things that we included as an objective when we did the stormwater rate increase recently. Most importantly, the city wishes to move in the direction of developing greener stormwater infrastructure than we have in the past. And we have to do that, it's going to take a number of capital projects. Stormwater efforts that we do dovetail with all the other departments in the city, especially Public Works and Planning and Transportation. So the idea of a stormwater master plan really sets out what it is we as a city are intending to do in terms of managing and improving the quality of stormwater runoff leaving the city. Kelsey or James may have a word or two to add to that.
Yeah, I'll just throw in, Jason, that the state is getting ready to change the MS4 kind of requirements as well, or they should be doing that fairly soon before the end of the year. And so some of our requirements may change or what we're required to do. And so incorporating some of this now and getting Wood's input on how to do that or how we can help do that moving forward is also part of this plan.
Yeah, so, and I hear all that. I mean, there are a lot of municipalities that don't even have a stormwater utility. And, they have to comply with these same MS4, presumably have to, comply with a lot of these same requirements. And I'm sure they're not getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in consultants to help them. So I'm not saying it's not necessary. I'm just wondering about the timing of this and the vetting of this. So to the contract, if administration is comfortable, with this, I'll support it. But on the contract itself, is this 200,000 a fixed price? Or are we going to be hearing change orders for more information?
No, and this is, I'll speak a little bit on this, Kelsey. One of the reasons that we really like Wood's proposal is the first part, like Kelsey talked about, that $70,000 on the plan. And then a big part of that is, and then the second half, the implementation is a large part of that money. A lot of the other contractors, a big portion was the plan. They were all around 200 to a little more than 200,000. And then that second portion, or the first portion on most of the contractors, was well over what Wood had proposed just to develop a plan. So the second part of the implementation can be changed if for some reason finances change.
Cannot be changed?
Can be changed.
Can be changed. And then I assume they're also going to get expenses on top of the 200,000, travel and all that other stuff?
No, again, if there's something that's part of that implementation plan, it will just come out of that budget. But again, Heather, the project manager, lives here in Bloomington, and so she'll be coordinating most of that. And so she we've talked about this in particular, and so that won't be part of any of those costs there.
So the deliverables for this 200,000, we get an actual plan, some kind of physical document, and that's $70,000. And then another 130,000. When you say implementation, what does that mean? So we're going to see some kind of plan. And if there's an example of one of these stormwater plans out there that you've done for another municipality, I'd like to take a look at that. And so we pay 70 to get the document. Why do we need to keep the consultant beyond that for implementation help? Why can't we implement with our own staff?
Heather, do you want to speak of your experiences with that transition from planning to action?
Yeah, sure. And I would be happy to provide this group with some of the deliverables that we put together in the planning phase. That's no problem at all. But, a concrete example that a lot of municipalities that we work for that have problems, like one concrete problem is maintenance on green infrastructure practices. And so when you evaluate a city and you look at all the best management practices, those practices that manage stormwater, you notice that there is a huge maintenance need. And so in the plan, we'll identify a need, and then we'll help the city define that solution. So one thing is, a lot of cities don't have all of these BMPs mapped in GIS. And so we'll have to get a database put together, private BMPs and public BMPs. And then if a private BMP isn't in compliance with the MS4 permit, we help the city come up with a process to get that BMP in compliance. So I think talking over, this phone call, it's hard for me to describe, what exactly will be in the plan versus implementation, but a lot of it is process type stuff in the planning phase. And then we help the city with the process items. Another concrete example is a lot of cities don't have green infrastructure typical details. So they don't have how contractors are going to construct BMPs. And in the plan, we'll call out that, hey, the city of Bloomington might need some green infrastructure typical details. The implementation will actually go ahead and create those physical typical details in the construction document for you. And so it's just, the planning process always takes about a year, and we work with all the different city departments to see what those needs are. And then, like I said, I've been doing this for 15 to 20 years. So we have a library of engineering standards and details to help you create. And that, again, is just one concrete example to help you understand like what the plan is versus what the implementation is.
And I think that last one that she talked about, the green infrastructure standard design, that's something that Phil and engineering has kind of struggled with. We want to implement green infrastructure, but we don't actually know to tell them what we want it to look like and what it needs to look like, and the maintenance requirements of that. So that's something that we need help doing.
Yeah, and I know we've worked with other city departments to tell them what we want, and we don't, we want something consistent and that other folks submitting plans to us know what we expect. That'll make plan reviews go much easier, and it'll make maintenance more feasible as well. I also want to say, in terms of the cost, the stormwater master plans can range anywhere from this much money all the way up to hundreds of thousands of dollars based on how much engineering you want to include in it. We've already spent some money in the past year or two on drainage studies, and I know folks in engineering can speak more to that than myself, but that's why we're not spending $300,000 on a stormwater master plan like some other cities will do, because we're not doing all of the engineering modeling for all of our storm sewer system. We're focusing on the baseline program assessment to modernize our stormwater program, and also to just better align it with other city goals and other city plans like sustainability and climate action goals. So I've talked to some other folks in other city departments already, and there's so many items in these other plans that I'm saying that, well, if we have a stormwater master plan, that will solve this issue and we can address that need with this type of plan. There are a lot of other stormwater master plans around just the state of Indiana for similarly sized utilities. And it's going to help us with long range capital improvement planning and having a focus on the green infrastructure implementation. So we have a plan set in place for how we're going to spend all of the funding from our rate increase for city owned projects, as well as plans that we get in for new development and redevelopment.
Very good. I appreciate the explanations. Thank you.
One other point I'd like to bring up is that the other thing that the master plan does is it communicates to the regulated community of developers and others in the city as to exactly what it is we're trying to do and why we're doing it and how it all ties together. So it doesn't feel so much like one of these situations, well, you've never made us do this sort of thing before. Why are you doing it now? And it really gives us a much better vehicle for communicating our objectives and our goals for the city in a much more transparent and understandable way.
And Jim, you had a question.
Yeah, Jason was smart enough to ask most of the questions that I had, but I would like to pursue one. I'm trying to get my head around the separation of the planning phase from the implementation phase. Until you have a plan, you don't know what the implementation will be. So I don't understand how you set a dollar amount on implementation without having the plan. So could someone give me a hint about that? Because Jason asked whether that money could go up, and it will depend on what the plan is. So,
So I will let Heather explain some more on her experience on this, but I just want to say that I used to manage grants for IDEM before this for watershed management plans and implementation. And we had a lot of plans sitting on the shelves that were written but never implemented. And I don't want that to happen with this plan. And this is going to be a way for us to get some of the deliverables that we need right away. We can start working on these implementation projects while we're still in the planning process, if everyone is okay with that. It'll streamline the process basically to make sure that we are going to be taking action. Some of the deliverables on top of what Heather has already talked about for implementation will be helping us with ordinance updates and policies for the MS4 program. We can also help facilitate workshops for elected officials and our private sector stakeholders. It's often useful to have a professional consultant help with some of those things, especially when we're talking, within city government, having someone from the outside coming in and discussing it from their outside perspective. And then some other things related to green infrastructure. So we can also have them complete design bid packages for us so that we know certain capital projects are going to be coming down pretty soon. We can have those planned and ready to go if they're high priority. So, and we can basically pick and choose whatever we'd like with the rest of the funding in this contract, but this will guarantee us a way to make progress sooner rather than later, not hold it off.
Yeah, I think you did a good job explaining that, Kelsey. But when we saw the RFP issued, we used our professional experience to come up with a unique approach. And our approach had spending money at the planning phase, but not spending the whole $200,000 just for a plan. Like, we wanted to make sure that, there was budget left over to get the city into action and not just spend the whole $200,000 on planning, like Kelsey said, and let the plan just sit there. Also, in the planning phase, we're going to be looking at some GIS data, looking at the soils in Bloomington, trying to figure out where it makes sense to do green infrastructure on capital projects. So maybe we can get some pilot projects going as well, and that could be an implementation piece. So yeah, it's always good to not spend all your money just on the planning side of it, but also have some money left for the implementation. So in our approach, we didn't define what the implementation was going to look like. We just said, we'll have this much money left over for implementation, to answer your question.
Yeah, but if the plan takes more money than $130,000, then we would have to up the amount?
No, no. We'll watch the cost of the plan, but we may cut back on implementation. It's just kind of like how we do all the other, the sewer and water rehabilitation. We just kind of work through it, and what's left is what we get to implement. And we'll still have the plan there to say, well, when we do have funds, we can start here and here.
Okay, that seems fair.
And we'll make sure to give you regular updates on this as we get started. And so if you have any issues or questions along the way, please just reach out to myself or James. So.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, then.
I'm sorry, I was fumbling with my keyboard. I just wanted to say we can share with you a sample of what a master plan from another community might look like, if you'd like to have something to think about for what to expect from this.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Well, then I guess I'll ask, is there a motion to approve this agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and Latrina, please call the roll.
Bannock,
Yes.
Kapler,
Yes?
Parmenter,
Yes.
Burnham,
Yes.
Sherman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item, request for approval of a first amendment to the agreement with GRW Inc. On the North Dunn Street sewer capacity improvement. I think we were going to have Phil Peden here to talk with us about this.
This is Brad Schrader with the engineering department. I'm going to be presenting this for Phil tonight.
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Okay, so we're currently under contract with GRW to design sewer capacity improvements from Dunn Street down to really Cascade Park and the interceptor down there. And they had a scope of work which defined the work they were doing. And through the process, there's been a couple items that weren't in their scope of work that we need them to do. One of them is to coordinate and hire out geotechnical services to do borings. And then in support of that, some brush clearing. And then also this sewer, the current one actually terminates in a storm pipe. And that storm pipe, we might have been doing the work under a different project, but that's not going to occur anymore. So we would like them to include improvements on this culvert as part of this. So the additional design services, and then we're also having extra money that can be used if other things out of scope come up, and then we would only allocate that based on our approval to them to go ahead and spend it, and that's for another $10,000. So the total change is an increase of $37,745. The new not to exceed amount of the contracts, $233,745. So I'd be happy to take any questions on this.
Yes, Amanda.
So I have the student housing project that's mentioned here on the contract summary. It says expands the scope for the new student housing wastewater flow project. Is that a developer or is that university, or what's the situation there? And are they incurring any of the costs to increase the sewer flow?
I can take this one. This is Indiana University is building new dormitories in that watershed, that sewer shed. That sewer shed is pretty much maxed out. We did a long discussion with IU and looked at all the sources of water that are flowing into that sewer shed and determined that IU would be responsible for over 40% of the cost based on their volume of water compared to other sources of water in that sewer shed.
So they're not taking on, this is a question. Is this then our responsibility to do this, or is it in part the developer, which the developer is IU?
The developer is IU. We will pay the portion that they don't pay. And we are discussing ways that we can we can do long-term development of sewer infrastructure in a more coherent way. Historically, we've often had situations where the entity that built the new structure that put us over the limit and we had to do an expansion, they won the lottery and so to speak, and had to pay for the whole project. We've realized that that's not a really realistic way to do it on some of these projects. And in this case, this is a sewer that would serve a lot of area that is either going to be redeveloped or is going to be newly developed in the coming decades. So our strategy is to since IU basically set the schedule for this by the need that they're establishing, they're going to pay their portion of it, and then we're going to pay the rest. And over time, we're working on ways to allocate the additional costs to future connections so that we can come up with a more coherent way of handling these major infrastructure expansions in the future. And we're talking about it in some other basins as well.
Great, thanks, Vic.
As far as the project goes, CBU is managing the design, and then we'll go to bid, and it'll be done through reimbursement. So we're managing the design part of it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, then is there a motion to approve this amendment?
So move.
Second.
All right, and Latrina?
Parmenter,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Burnham,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Kepler.
Yes. Okay, the amendment to the agreement is approved. Before we move on to old business, I just want to remind the public that if you are watching this meeting on our Facebook live stream and you would like to give public comment a little later in the meeting, you can start typing that into the comments of the Facebook live stream, and Holly will read those aloud during public comment. All right. So is there any old business from the board? Seeing none, is there any old business from staff? No. Any new business from the board? None. Any new business from staff?
None.
Okay. Subcommittee reports. Let's see, I know we had at least one subcommittee meet, right, Latrina?
That's correct. Rules and regulations.
Okay, and so do we have a report from rules and regulations?
Yes, I'll give the report for rules and regulations. We've had 2 meetings to discuss 2 separate items. The first one is in regards to the recommendation to start a deposit program. The reason that this has come to the Rules and Regulations Committee is that there has been a change in the state legislation in which the CBU can no longer go to a landlord to recoup funds that are in arrears from a tenant. So essentially what this does, by the state changing this legislation, it leaves CBU in a little bit of a bind when individuals leave and don't pay their bill. We do have the AOK through it's IRC, I think that I always get all these initials mixed up, but we do have approval and we are allowed to go forward and put a deposit program in place. And so the Rules and Regs Subcommittee is working with staff to come up with some guidelines and an ordinance around this so that we can start requiring a deposit program. So that's the first issue that's on the table. The second issue that is on the table has to do with single metering with multiple uses in the property. And without going into lots and lots of details of what this entails, I will simply say that the committee is working on this as well, on looking at some rules and ordinance in terms of how we're going to move forward with this. So nothing has been set in stone in terms of what we've decided. It's a regular working progress right now on these 2 separate issues. I would.
Oh, you muted.
Or if Vic or Chris Wheeler's been very involved with this as well, if we have anything else to add to it at this time.
I think you hit the nail right on the head.
Okay, well, good. So stay tuned, and we will have some things that we'll be bringing before the board, hopefully sooner rather than later. We do anticipate not fast tracking this by any means, but keeping this moving along so that we can have some things in place, hopefully by the 1st of the year. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Amanda. All right. Next we have staff reports. Vic Kelson.
Just begin by welcoming our new employee, Elise Verovka, to over in purchasing, and thanks for coming tonight. So welcome to CBU and welcome to the USB. I wanted to talk a little bit about an organization called INWARN. That's INWARN. This is an organization of water and wastewater utilities around the state of Indiana. It's basically a mutual support network for utilities when crisis situations happen. CBU has historically not been part of this organization, but many of our peers are involved in this organization, and we're looking into joining up. And this would be a contract that we'll explain to you, but essentially it's a situation where it's utilities working together to help each other out when the going gets really rough. So if there's a tornado somewhere, or one of those kinds of situations, we can work together. We had a situation a couple of years ago with the big floods in January of 2019 that shut down the water treatment plant at Brown County State Park. And the state reached out to us for assistance. We didn't end up having anybody on site, but we did talk with them quite a bit at that time. And so I think it's the nature of people in the utilities business to want to work together in these kinds of situations, especially municipals. So we're going to be bringing some information to you in the coming weeks to look at whether whether CBU wants to participate in this. We have, as was announced today in a press release, last week we learned of another COVID case. It's the 6th case we've had at CVU. It's the first one that the city has had in 6 weeks' time. And the case was in engineering. And to my knowledge, there's no evidence that there was any additional exposure owing to that case. And that's all in a press release that went out from City Hall today. And then the last thing is we're nearing completion on the installation of the advanced metering infrastructure project. The next phase will be the deployment of the customer portal. So over the coming weeks, you're going to start hearing more and more about getting connected up on the customer portal and learning how to use it to help you look at your water use and help you to manage your water use going in the future. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Beck. All right, Holly, were there any public comments coming in on our Facebook stream?
Yeah, one comment from the public regarding some street lights, and I will make sure to pass that message along to our coworkers over at Street Department, but nothing for the Utility Service Board.
Okay, thank you. All right, well then with that, is there a motion for adjourning this meeting?
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.